Well, it looks like we're live, and that's what it's telling me, that we're live. And so welcome to Journey of an Aesthete podcast. Funky Friday at 5, part 6 of my now long-running 70s cinema and visual culture series. Today is a little different than some of the other episodes I've done because I'm restricting my discussion to 3 filmmakers and 3 films. And it gets a little bit outside of my ordinary formulation, by which I mean, all 3 films today that I'm going to talk about are deeply 70s. At one and the same time, of course, they transcend such classification and in profound ways. Now, I wasn't quite sure how to proceed today. I had a lot of I don't know if the phrase is self-doubt, but a lot of uncertainty about how to approach these films. And I had actually debated internally of breaking this episode up into more than one episode. And so just dealing with just one film today, perhaps, or 2. And I'm going to kind of leave it up to, kind of this spirit of the moment and to proceed. But I want to do some talking and do some viewing because these are long films. The Chickstrand film is 59 minutes, about an hour. It's not quite as long as the others. But I want to talk a little bit about our first, it's a masterpiece, Frederick Wiseman's Welfare from 1975. Now, Fred Wiseman, he's made so many movies, and so it's interesting to think about my introduction to him and my experience of him over the decades. I think so. The film in surveys of Fred Wiseman, they always talk about Titty Cut Follies, Titty Cut. That's the film that's always mentioned. It's his first film. It was a muckraking film. It exposed corruption and abuse inside a state facility, and I think in Massachusetts. And that film has haunted him and documentary filmmaking came out in the 60s, so a long time. Unfortunately, that film tends to overshadow these incredible films that he's made over the past decades. So I'm just gonna off the top of my head talk about some of my favorites. His first High School is remarkable, which is a portrait of a negative high school, more of a pejorative portrait in a sense. Although in Wiseman never in his films really leads the audience or the viewer into what to think, and he goes further than any other filmmaker, documentary or fiction, and allowing a kind of I would say democratic deliberativeness on the part of the viewer, and he goes so far in that respect that in a sense he's a poet. And he uses the raw material of life, actual people, actual working conditions, actual institutions. And in his own words, he tries to make a novel or a poem out of them. And moreover, doesn't really, he has opinions, and his films have points of view, but the opinions and points of view don't lead. So I just mentioned High School 1. He also made a High School 2 about a more, in the 90s, I think, about a more progressive high school that he liked. And his portrait of Mayor Walsh of Boston in City Hall from a few years ago is remarkable. National Portrait Gallery. So what Wiseman does is he does films about, institutions is what they call it. So he'll do a film about a prison. He'll do a film about a ballet company, a film about a library. He did the National Portrait Gallery. He did some of his more recent films. He did a film about a ballet company. And he also did a film about one of my favorite places in Paris, Crazy Horse, which is an erotic dance place. And he also does, he's done a couple of fiction films, actually. He has a new one out now, I think, about Tolstoy and Tolstoy's wife, I think, if I'm not mistaken. I think that just came out or has been out. And then he made another film of somebody reading a letter, a personal film. And those are sort of his forays into fiction. But, you know, there's a lot I could say about Wiseman. I don't really feel like I can do him justice, because an artist operating on Wiseman's level and with Wiseman's integrity is, he's, well, in the case of Wiseman, he's making movies that are so dense. They're dense with psychological information. They're dense with sociological information. And sort of going to do before we show some examples from Welfare, I'm going to do a little summary if I can. What Wiseman does is he goes to a place, like let's say he's going to do a film about, well, he did a film called At Berkeley, about Berkeley University in California. That's one of the newer ones, which is, of course, 3 hours of, you know. So what he does is he focuses his camera on interactions among and between the people and their environment. What he never does, and it's a hallmark of his style that he doesn't do this, is ever have anybody address the camera, that is us, and he never has any kind of voiceover, and I think almost never music. I think, I mean, there may be some, you know, again, I've seen all of his films, by the way, and I've seen, my favorites I've seen more than once. Domestic Violence from 2001, which is it's in Tampa, Florida. And that's in 2 parts. There's a 3-hour part, which is just therapy sessions of these women in this place. And then there's another 3-hour part, which is cops going on calls, domestic calls, house to house. It would be interesting to talk about that part of domestic violence in light of some of the more, shall I say, irresponsible types of documentary work, like Cops, for example. It'd be interesting to compare what Wiseman does and what they do. Any event, I just wanted to talk a little bit about him. And he describes himself as trying to do what a novelist does or a poet does, except not using actors, using actual people. And his films have almost no exposition. So there's no explanation. And actually he himself does a minimal amount of research. And so and I actually think, and I don't know if he would describe it this way, I think it's kind of a philosophical, spiritual position that he has in his practice over the many, many, many years. And it's actually, you'll see it now, the result on film is that he wants to have as few preconceptions, categories in his head as possible. And he wants to honor the souls of the people he's filming, quite literally. And he takes that very seriously, as you'll see. And he wants to, and this actually connects Wiseman's work to other kinds of films, actually, and filmmakers. So I see in him Cassavetes, actually. I see a lot of Warhol, too, believe it or not. Andy Warhol. I mean, these are all, I mean, Fred Wiseman himself loves fiction film and is a fan of comedies, and he goes to see mainstream. He's very knowledgeable. One of his favorite films is Paths of Glory by Kubrick. You know, he loves Jim Jarmusch. His favorite film is Down by Law. Mine is Stranger Than Paradise, and a lot of people like both. But in any event, we're going to get into Welfare, and I'm gonna proceed because I want to be respectful to the film, but also I wanted to give kind of breadth of his vision, because he has a vision of what to do with the camera. And so I'm going to show the very opening. And he does something sort of like an establishing shot. He shows faces. You know, a few seconds with each face. By the way, there's no payoff. So a lot of the people he photographs, there's never a narrative payoff. You may not see them later. It's a textural thing, just to kind of introduce this welfare office in 1975 in New York City. And then I'm going to cut to, I'm going to have to do a little tech work and change the disc, because we're going to show the largest portion of the film, which is part 2. And I'm going to try to start off with a communication between 2 welfare workers or staff people talking to each other about their lives or business, and then their interaction with some extremely difficult scenarios that unfold in real durational time with welfare recipients and different people. But, this idea of capturing the soul is something that, might sound a little pretentious, but there are a handful of filmmakers that do that. Not just in documentary, of course, but in fiction. And they're interested in that. And Fred Wiseman is among them. So we're going to talk about the two other folks. We got Chickstrand and we got Robert Kramer. Hopefully we'll get to both those today. But let's just try to get some tech stuff here. See what's going on.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, that's it. Just have a seat. Okay. Okay, just have a seat. Okay, Mr. Hamilton, just have a seat. Hold your head straight there. Okay, have a seat. Okay, sir, just have a seat. Okay. Siéntate. Have a seat. Have a seat. Okay, just have a seat, please. Okay, have a seat. Mr. Wells, would you mind removing your hat, please? Okay, fine. Okay, have a seat, please.
Alexander Taswell.
Foresee.
Indian people he don't like here, I'm Apache from Oklahoma, I don't want to give you nothing because I'm an Indian. What's happened to the Indian people? What's happened? You don't good? No good? I'm a human being like anybody, like a white or black or something like that. You understand? And he don't want to help it, he don't want me helping because I'm an Indian people, I don't see too many Indian people in this country, in New York. You got any escaping from this reservation. You got it in Washington, I take them out from there because they like a camp, a concentration camp. He take it out of my land, and push me in the reservation like a jail, And now he don't dig it too much. He don't dig it. The government, he don't like it, the Indian people. You understand? He prey into Indian people, That's why every time I go, he say, you Indian, get out of here. I don't want to see India in this place. That's not good. That is not good. Because, if he's supposed, I'm a human being, Like any people, Yes, man.
I called 39 broadband.
Okay, man.
So far as we know, they have made no provisions to issue ID cards to their claimants.
Right, that's what I tell you.
But on the other hand, welfare cannot give you one either because you're not on our roads. The best thing for you to do when you get your check is when a check cash in place, or maybe a landlord will cash it.
Yes,
Keep
ma'am.
going to SSI until they come up with some.
So that's a pretty good immersive that's a pretty good leap into the universe of Frederick Wiseman. It's fairly good way to start the opening of Welfare. It's very common in his films when again, as you saw there, oftentimes characters in his films of all types. In other words, not just people who are disadvantaged or who are in poverty or people who are native, discussing his situation there, but school teachers and nurses and bank presidents even and ballet choreographers and all the people that have been in his films. it's very common that they have sort of rants, and he lets the camera, they just start talking, and they often, it's actually been a source of much interesting discussion in literature on Wiseman, of which is too little, I think. But when it's discussed, I think, people don't know quite what to make of it, because Wiseman is so indulgent often of the speakers. And it's very, it's often unclear ethically a little bit, in the sense of not that the film's unclear, but what I mean, it's the point I made earlier, that Wiseman very much likes to have we viewing these people be in a little bit of a place of indecision. So he'll often have, very difficult, tense situations, and also because he minimizes exposition. I mean, there's exposition, the things unfold, and he shapes his films, and he edits very much. The scenes themselves are quite long. In other words, the discussions between people are quite lengthy, quite immersive, quite durational would be the word, right? But when he goes from scene to scene, there's incredible precision in his editing. And that's important too. And so I'm going to go to part 2 and try to get a more of an even more in-depth. He has this on 2 discs. I really appreciate the fact that his company is selling these films. I think he has most of his films for sale. So I have to get the right moment, because I have to get the right moment when the 2 men are talking. I'm trying to, because I want to show cinematically the transition from staff to the people they're serving, or clients, or whatever the term would be, right? And the fluidity of the way and also the way the film, again, it's that sense of the drama's playing out in our minds.
Okay.
There's drama, but it's playing out in our minds.
Okay, that's it.
So we kind of, but I have to do some maneuvering here.
Okay, just have a seat.
All right.
Okay, Mr.
All right. Bear with me, because I'm trying to find a. It's interesting also to watch his films in fast, like this, because you can see what he does here compositionally. He's interested in. I mean, I'm not going to play the whole film. I mean, it would be not. I mean, you should watch it. But he's interested in, as I said before, interactions between and among his subjects. He's not interested so much in primarily in our relationship, in a sense of intimacy with the subjects. It's them. And so it's an interesting case of, I mean, there's a theory about film, that film is basically, as an art form, is seeing the world as if we were not present, right? So that our presence, is kind of not acknowledged in a way. I mean, that's one idea about what film's many things. And although I think in partly, at least in terms of mainstream filmmaking, that's of course very true. And I think Frederick Wiseman utilizes that fact about, you want to call it voyeurism if you will, or you want to call it, he hates the word observation. That's his, he's always railing about me. People, stop calling me an observational filmmaker, because I think it minimizes in his work the enormous amount of, in the editing room, hours upon hours of construction, of taking, he goes to institution, he probably filmed this welfare office for maybe a month or something, I don't know, and thousands of hours, and he has to sculpt a kind of a thing out of it. Um, well, I might as well just show. This is not what I wanted to.
Again,
I'll just show.
ask about your employment background and see if they've got anything that looks good. It's very important to get the phone number of that person because just in case, let's say you're unable to keep an appointment or something, they right away start telling you to close the case. You know, and this is one of the problems that you might have. So in general, I'm also going to give you my phone number because I'm going to have your case here. So that, I mean, if some complication comes up, right away call. So that you won't, you know, there won't be any misunderstanding because it's much easier to, you know, settle things out before they happen.
This is not it. C-A here. This is what you're telling me.
I've been a supervisor since 1966, and I see people who've been
Here we go.
supervisors since 1969 who are getting all the very
This is
best
a great
jobs,
monologue here.
and I don't like it.
Who has the best job?
Well, you take Zanoni, she's frozen in. No one can touch her. You take this woman here, she's pleading hardship. You take Mr. Morris, he's pleading union delegate. He can't be moved.
She's a union delegate.
Right, that's what I'm saying. And they pull super seniority. So by the time they finish, I have no seniority at all. Because everybody else is when you take Sustil, who should have been out of here, and she's pleading hardship. Well, it's more hardship for me. I have to come from New Jersey. What are you talking about? I get up at 5:30 every morning and spend a lot of money. I spend more money to get to this job than anybody else on staff. You wouldn't believe it, the money I spend to get to this job. That's right. Whether I come by train, whether I come by my personal car, or what. It's very expensive to come from New Jersey.
You know, at one time, the department didn't have anybody on the staff who lived out of state. You know that.
Don't give me about out of state. I've been on when I first came to the department, I lived in New York. Not only did I live in New York, I was a homeowner in New York, having a house 60 by 100 at 11445 179th Street, St. Albans. A very wealthy section. Right? Now, I own property in New York. I'm entitled to work in New York and live there for many, many years.
I know that.
The reason I went to Newark was because my stepfather died, left my mother all alone in a house. So I went to live with her. When she died, she gave it, the house came to me by inheritance. What am I going to do? Throw the house in the street? Right?
Well, if you have any agreements, why don't you discuss it with Stanley?
You discuss with Stanley, he has his favorites. Just like before. I should have been the supervisor of general service because I had the seniority, I had the training, I've had the courses, I've been to Fordham, I've had casework 1, casework 2, personality and behavior 1, personality and behavior 2, administration and juvenile delinquency. Now that fits me for something. I haven't been just sitting on my rear, not keeping abreast of the times. I've always kept up. And I think I deserve better than the kind of fair shuffle that I've been getting here in this welfare department. Because this man is a czar, and he's going to put in who he wants to put in. That's all.
If you have
He's discussing it.
why do you take it out on me?
And that's why I've resorted to CO, because I figured they must have some kind of job down there, even if it's no more than interviewing people for maybe jobs in the department or whatnot. Because I can do interviewing and whatnot.
So you're forgetting about this memo?
If Mr. Sullivan wants to speak to me, you can tell him that this came through and that Ms. Hightower would like to see him in reference to this memo before I have to resort to grievance machinery.
We want to get this moment of
Curtis
the
Rassa,
you two.
because he was going to legal aid or MFY, one or the other. So if you should get a call, the big question is, who is he?
How many names?
3 different names. We don't know, and each one used the other as the landlord in the particular case. So if he's being evicted, who is evicting who?
I spoke to the arresting officer.
He's evicting himself.
He had him arrested the other day.
Yeah.
He had a record a mile long. And
Yeah, he has a big record.
big record. You know, he doesn't fear getting busted. He doesn't fear getting busted.
No, all these guys. It's just a normal routine of things. They're not excited about it.
He wasn't excited about it.
That doesn't bother them. They're accustomed to it. Anyway, I'm only letting you know this, in case you should get a call. That the big problem is who is who. We don't know who the man is. We don't know that he.
Well, I called out Jack Williams, and he answered to Jack Williams.
All right. Now it's Curtis Rassa. There's another guy, Jack Kiger. Well, this is why I put in each record. Besides, we don't have the record.
I called out Jack. He answered. You know, he came over.
Anyway, the district attorney has all the records anyway, so we take no action until this is disposed of by the
How
court.
stupid can he be to come in today? Over here, he knows the
They have chutzpah to the end.
you know, you locked him up, and he still came in against us.
What's he got to lose?
Unbelievable. Us.
Rosie afraid it was too late for this, and she told me to come back to make Eugene to get me for tomorrow, maybe. It was too late for he came over from upstairs, it was closed.
It's on Thursday.
It's Friday.
Right, no, you're supposed to get it in the mail. He was supposed to bring this in this morning, and it's due.
But you said you made appointment for tomorrow. I mean, it was.
All right, I give you what.
Okay.
She said it has to Friday.
I wanted to have a big chunk of the film for you to experience his conversation. The woman's asking problems with her work, telling her situation in New York, and then the 2 men kibitz, and then I'm trying to figure out what. There's a really tense moment. It's actually there's many tense moments, but this is the one that's the most maybe climactic. That I'm trying to. No. Yeah, here's a.
All right, I'm trying to find out the figure that
They
I
won't
get.
pay this rent. See, in the event that you were to find an apartment for $150.
Okay. Now, all I care about is if I had 150 instead of 175. You're telling me they would pay it.
Right, okay, let's assume it was 150.
All right. Now, because they won't put a maximum limit on that and say, this is, we will treat this as 150 and the rest she has to
They
make
cannot
up.
do that, that's right.
Well then, what am I'm supposed to relocate?
That's correct. This isn't mine,
That's insane. All right.
be
Now,
that as it may, that's, okay, that's.
I want to find out how I get that maximum allotment for $150.
You would have to live in an apartment for $150. They will not allow you to live in an apartment for more, and only pay partial. That's not legal, that's, this is the city law, it's actually state law, that they allow only a certain amount per person.
How do you contest it?
You will file for a fair hearing. So your beef is not with me, the beef is with the law. Now, the law that I'm citing you, that I'm telling you is that the rent allotment for one person may not exceed
Oh, that's.
$150. This is state law, and this is what your beef is. You wish to either question my,
No, I wish to get that 150, period.
then you would have to go and, you know, that's what it is. You're in $175. Your contention is you're entitled to that. You're willing to make up the difference. And what I'm contending is that it's not, you know, they're not going to go for that. You can ask them. That's what they're there for. Okay?
I don't know. Well, it just seems if you work and if your rent is over a certain amount, you have a problem.
This is the Taft-Hartley law, established in 1937. And a thing but old charity.
What?
The Taft-Hartley law imposed on the welfare center.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
It has to be the 6th. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
What I can do today?
Well, I don't know. What do you say?
Edwin Acevedo.
You don't have no place to live now.
No, I have no place to live. That's why I'm here by the welfare now.
So those are some moments from welfare. You know, there's that really dramatic scene. There's an explosion, and there's two caseworkers, and they have a quarrel, a verbal fight with the some of the people, and it's quite a scene. I wasn't sure if I wanted to play that in its entirety, although it is very dramatic. I think I might play the very ending of the film, which is sort of another monologue. One of the characters talks about his life, and I think I might close with that. But you know, again, it's always issue.
Does that get me a place to live?
Because she's pregnant doesn't mean she automatically.
What is your appointment for manpower to get a physical
On the
examination?
20th of next month. From here to then.
When did you lose your job?
About 2 days ago, she told me she didn't want to use.
Sally, you're gonna have to go back to Waverly Welfare Center.
I'm just thinking about his decision making as a filmmaker. To show those corridors, and so when someone will speak to somebody else, the camera will capture not only that, but also capture associative things around the main focus, if that makes any sense. And there's an associative quality, but it's not. Again, associations in other kinds of films, of the filmmakers, are kind of mapped out in a way to make a certain collection of points, I think. And so he doesn't do that. He makes other kinds of points. So he's interested in, again, the relationship between the people in these places. And he wants us, after all, we are watching his film. He wants us to experience that. But what he doesn't want or do is have that which we experience that's filmed communicate directly with us in the form of an interview, for example. And you know, really, in no way is it about right or wrong. These are different styles. I mean, one style is predominant. I mean, the style of a kind of a collage-like presentation of a story with constant music, constant narration, constant talking to the camera, various people talking to the camera. So there's emotional bond is made with the viewer. That's almost every documentary that's made. And so it's almost like, you know, Wiseman created this totally unique film style, and very few, if any, people picked up on it. And I think it's kind of interesting. Part of the reason might be so, you know, if I'm watching a lizgarbus film, and lizgarbus is a terrific filmmaker, and I was tempted to play, for contrast, one of her films, maybe part of the Vow, or Who Killed Garrett, one of her true crime pictures, just to kind of show not just for the contrast, but also it occurs to me that, you know, in a lizgarbus film that she might make for HBO, there's enormous visual interest. So there's a lot of visual. It's broken up in the way that a room is supposed to be interesting. You know, like interior decorators talk about interior space having to have visual interest so that you don't get supposedly bored. I put that in quotes, scare quotes. And it's almost like these films are designed to sort of break up things. So you'll have a testimonial, and you'll have a, you know, after a testimonial, you'll have a shots of an actual place, a lot of archival footage of the past, of people of the past, and things from the past. And it's sort of assembled together. And if you think about it, that gives an art director and filmmakers a lot to do. And from that point of view, or their point of view, Wiseman's project might appear, shall we say, I'm going to be kind about it, maybe a little minimal, maybe some would say. But then again, from Wiseman's point of view, he feels that there's something happening with these human beings, and he does not want to interrupt that. He wants it to play out durationally. And these are all, you know, the whole history of all the arts, and film's just part of it, is a history of these different convictions, actually, about how to make a film, about what a film should do, how a film should represent people or not represent people, and what the purpose of it all is. And you know, just as there's, you know, different kinds of people in the world, there's going to be different kinds of films. And what's rare, though, is somebody who's really unique. You can put on a Fred Wiseman movie, any movie, if I haven't seen one of them, and I probably could tell you it was his film in like 10 minutes. So he has his own style, which is not everybody has. So I'm going to figure out what I'm going to do here. I think I didn't know really how to proceed with Milestones. I didn't, because Milestones is sort of this epic, epic novelistic movie about the 60s new left, or radical 60s people, the aftermath of that, and trying to make a life for themselves. It's got Grace Paley in her only acting performance, the writer Grace Paley, in it, playing a filmmaker. And it's a long, thorny movie, and it's has things of communes in it, and activism, and archival. And Robert Kramer developed his own style, which often has a very deeply human and humane interactive quality between his figures and his subjects. But what Kramer does is Kramer's political, and he's polemical, and it's like he's trying to put everything into this film. In fact, there's an interview where he said, I want to put all my feelings, my hatred of capitalism, or my love for, I don't know, revolutionary movements around the world, and et cetera, et cetera. And you want to put all those feelings in the film. And so I'm going to, an interesting show a little bit of the opening. His film, there's this political thing of these ex-radicals. They're still radicals. They're not ex-radicals. They're not in the 60s anymore. They're stuck in the middle of the 70s, which is not always to their liking, trying to make their own a life for themselves. And I should say my politics are quite different from the people in this film, in at least a couple of respects. So one respect is that I'm not, never have been pro Ho Chi Minh in North Vietnam. I mean, I'm not. And I, you know, they, you know, well, that actually was quite common in the 60s and 70s for radicals to take the opposite, you know, take the other side's side, you know, the North Vietnamese, the anti-American. And of course, you know, Jane Fonda and Donald Sutherland did that. I think that Fuck the Army Project, I think is what it was called, which was a sort of comedic little series of films they did and then Steelyard Blues, and there's that whole thing. So this is sort of connected to that. And so in the film, you'll be watching the film, and it'll proceed like a narrative film of people talking, and there'll be this interruption of a love poem by Ho Chi Minh and a picture of Ho Chi Minh. And there's a kind of there's native activists talking about trying to create a First Peoples nation and revolt, and they'll talk about, and those people do acupuncture, and sort of it's like a, you know, it's like almost 4 hours long, and you know, I you know, I have some sympathies with the people in this movie, but they are far more radical than am I, and we might reach different conclusions about what to support or not. But I have enormous. I first saw this film in the year 2000, I think, or 99, quite late, because these films were not really that accessible. Really, accessibility is a thing, you know. So, and I don't know quite how to proceed, except there's a little secret to Milestones, and the secret is this. So the main character gets out of prison. He's a political prisoner, probably, you know, sort of almost like a little bit like the Weather Underground, maybe a little bit more benign than the Weather Underground, perhaps, or maybe he was, you know, maybe he was in prison for supporting North Vietnam. I don't know, really. It's unclear. And he's out of prison. He's talking to his fellow politicos, you know. And there's a scene where he goes into his old apartment room, and he has all these books, and he's trying to gather stuff from his belongings. And the only belonging he wants is this. Out of all the hundreds of books, is I want this. And the film doesn't zoom in on it, actually. It's interesting. Robert Kramer is very subtle. But there's a little, I'm actually kind of ruining the film in a way. This is all spoilers, because I'm actually going to show what Kramer does with this incredible, one of the great, suzukiroshi, one of the great works of spiritual literature and education in the whole of the 20th century. Here, this. How it relates to his vision. And it's very different, of course, than the Marxist-Leninist, anarchist / secular revolutionary part of the film. So it's interesting. And I kind of trying to, so bear with me here. Some tech, always tech issues, of course, because we're, but I wanted to sort of give you a taste of, a taste of cherry. No, a taste of honey. Here we go. Out of prison. I hope this is. Oh yeah, here we go. This is the.
social security system is in trouble. Even more unsettling is the proposal that Congress raise the age.
Oh, I'm glad to see you. I am so glad to see you. Let me take this bag and put it back here. Wow, you are looking terrific. You really are. You must have about 1,000 things that are just ready to explode outside of you, just getting out and stuff. Were you waiting very long?
No. It really took a long time to process me out of there.
Everybody, all of us, are so glad that you're out. We thought that you remember the dinners that we used to have? Well, we thought maybe we'd have one tonight. Everybody come over to my house and we'd have a dinner.
We'll see.
Yeah.
You know, I think I have to go very slow. I mean, I'm glad you came, but I don't know if I can see a lot of other people right away.
Yeah.
Even friends, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Maybe you're gonna feel different tonight. You know, when you feel all of us around you. You probably want to split, don't you? Yeah, let's get out of here. But it's something I've been thinking about a lot. About whether you feel resentful towards me or towards the rest of us because you were the one that did time.
I don't know. I feel good about what we did. I mean, we all helped a lot of deserters get out of the country. They were good people. I liked them.
So I think that's, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
And I liked them a lot too. But
I just want to interject some historical political information. So that I think it's a reference to the Vietnam Resistors League, the War Resistors League, which is a whole incredible movement of that time, and very involved. And so that again, I was misremembering because there's many people in the film, and there's many, but and actually people were activists involved that were arrested en masse because it's because of course the time. And of course, interesting, I didn't know I was going to didn't know I was going to show the Ho Chi Minh poem, but you could see that in Kramer's universe, he's showing the people we just met in the car. That's the fictional characters. But constantly throughout the film, he's always editing back and forth shots of slave rebellions and drawings of John Brown and photos of the Vietnamese villages, constantly. Always an association with, this film. He's saying this film is our movement. This is our politics. It's very upfront. It's actually kind of remarkable because it's actually quite rare, I think. And for a filmmaker to be so, I guess it's sincerity and authentic about his life and what he's done with it and his politics. It's like this. And it's almost, if I turn off the part of my self that is interested in whether it's right or wrong per se, but interested in kind of commitment. And of course, from their point of view, they're trying to fight, against this awful war. And that's, of course, a major theme of the time. But this film tries to cover everything, and so I just wanted to. I didn't mean to interrupt. I just want to give kind of a context, and I want to get to the scene where he's picking up this book because I was suzukiroshi. He goes to prison, he discovers Suzuki. I love it.
when I think if it had been me, instead of having a baby, I had gone to jail and I had sat there and been alone and watched my friends drift away and watch the whole context that we did it in just melt away. I think I would feel really pissy about it right now. I just want you to feel like it's okay, that at least I understand if that's how you feel.
I did feel angry. They all seemed to feel guilty that I was in and they were out. They didn't come to see me because they were embarrassed, or because they didn't know what to say.
I don't know if there's any way for you to feel it right now, feel it coming from me, but there's a whole lot of love that keeps us together. The whole time that you were in jail, things were falling apart on the outside too. And we didn't have any organizations left, but there was something that held us together, you know, that had brought us together in the first place and it held us together. I just hope that tonight you can feel it. You can feel the love that's between us.
Constant association. See, I love, so Nicholas Roeg does that in his films. Very different, totally different kind of filmmaker, but shares that stylistic concern with Robert Kramer. So instead of, it's not exactly flashback or flash forward. So, you know, the cuts, that he has throughout it is kind of a, I would say more of a spiritual or associative connection. It's not literal, and it's kind of almost, it's poetry. And, you know, this film does it constantly, and Nicholas Roeg's work is that way too. So in Man That Fell to Earth, David Bowie remembers the planet he comes from. You know, he's this alien on Earth, and he's stuck here, and it's complicated. And it's one of the greatest movies ever made, Man That Fell to Earth. Just beautiful, and it's like a dream, you know. I mean, not that the film's like a dream, but it's like a dream you would have, right? And although it's a dream too. And it's constant association, cutting. And it's not, the cutting is swift and it's quick and Roeg, but it's not, it has purpose and has meaning. And it's sort of, some think it's the way many people, what goes on inside of us internally, because there's a kind of a dreamlike sort of connection between all things. And of course he's doing this in film. We'll show a guy get out of prison, it'll cut to Vietnam, or it'll cut to something else. And there's a birth scene in this film. And in the middle of this birth scene, and it's very explicit, one of the most graphic representations of birth ever in any movie, he's cutting associatively to a grandmother, or to, I think it's the grandmother of one of the people, the woman giving birth, maybe, or it takes a village. There's a village around this woman in this house, literally giving birth. And so again, association. So I just wanted to talk about that's always going on here. And I think it's a way to make a film, you know. And you know, some today would use the term non-linear to describe this, I think. But that presupposes, again, it's not, you're not being given information to register and record for a plot. That's the difference. So in Roeg and Robert Kramer, in a lot of 70s films, it's the association itself for its own sake. So it's not really a payoff. There's another kind of payoff, I would say, though, than the usual kind still.
In fact, the last time that you saw me, I was still pregnant. You know, I've been so lucky of growing up with Hopi, and you've been in jail that whole time. I'm sorry it had to happen to me, you know, after you've been away for so long and everything, to come back to this.
Listen, I know this is hard for you to take, but you're putting up pretty well for the circumstances. You know, things have been much worse for other people in the building. For instance, just this week, Bob and Natalie came back. You know, the family downstairs, they're middle-aged, they have 2 kids. Yeah. And what had happened, there was a fire upstairs on that apartment. And the fire department just drenched it with water. So the new techniques they had for putting out the fire. There's a lot of stuff missing, but I think the important thing is that there's a danger of fire tonight. And I'm worried, you know, even if you get a place to stay tonight, if I could give you some of my boxes, you could get some of your valuables to sell.
I already put some of my stuff in the loft over there. You can take some of your stuff over. We can borrow a truck, maybe?
I have a car. Use the car tonight.
We can borrow a car and take some of your stuff over if you want to.
But it's important. You want me to leave you now? Look at what you have here. It's okay.
help you load some stuff up. I can this afternoon.
Thanks.
Okay, he finds the book. Here we go.
You're gonna leave all the stuff here?
He's going to show this book. The same. Look at this.
Well,
1974.
What about this
See?
beautiful coat?
it's all yours.
Come on, you got it. You want this, don't you?
No, really.
Really? Really?
Anything you want.
What about the books?
Take them.
Take it.
You must be able to take some of this stuff.
Nope.
Sorry, listen, hi, Sos. They give you 3 now. It's important that I get back to my apartment.
Lenny, that's terrific.
See the open theater poster? Judith Bolena.
Just get some valuables and I'll take care of you tonight. Anything you want, then you can leave it in my place.
Lenny, thanks.
Okay, if you need any more boxes, just let me know. Try and pick some stuff.
There it is.
Yeah, thanks.
What about the scarf?
Ah.
It's in the afternoon's time, 8:49.
Yay.
We're talking today to Jan Phillips outside the Dawson Law School. Jan has recently finished.
Yeah, I'd love to play all of this, them talking about their activism and their thing. But, I can't. But I just wanted to...
Has no jobs for, has no education plan or housing for. And you can pick up a kid on the street and
Notice the intimacy of their...
access to adequate legal representation.
Yeah, that. That.
Yeah, maybe 2 of you. Rehabilitated them. Prison only trains people to be able to live in prison. Moreover, it's even harder to get a start out in free society after you've been released from prison, because then you have the label, as well as all your other problems of being an ex-con.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, there it goes.
Back to Marv Pritchard.
More association. Political footage.
I don't think the center of my beliefs has changed. But I think I have to live with them differently.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I can explain it yet. It's just like I have to act when I feel it's necessary for me to, when there are no other alternatives, when I can see the way clearly. I don't want to act anymore out of guilt or habit, or because I learned I ought to.
I'm not sure I understand exactly what you're saying. What I feel mostly is that there are these things that have to be done, and we have to do them. I feel I have to work toward what I believe in. It's a real pressure that I feel constantly.
I don't know, for myself, I feel I have to act with each situation as it comes up.
Probably what I'm thinking is that I get worried sometimes. John's spoken a lot about you, and I know what you've done and I know what you've been through, and I really admire it. But now it appears that you're not into that anymore.
So I'm going to travel through this film a little bit more than I had prepared. This is a blind artist, potter.
Oh, it's heavy. What I was saying before about that pressure, I find myself in these situations all the time where I feel very vulnerable. Sometimes it's subtle and sometimes it's not so subtle. But what happens is it makes me much more aware of like all the ugly things that are around me, and also just the contradictions in my life.
What I feel is the guilt around me, the heaviness, the enormous weight that people live with.
Sometimes when I try and describe that pressure, it sounds like I'm telling people that they're copping out from saving the world or something. I really don't mean it to sound like that. I don't want to imply any guilt.
No, I know what you mean, but it keeps sort of creeping back in again. It's there. It's this baseline, it seems so often. two kids who
Okay, I'm gonna do some little bit of fishing around here, so I apologize. Bear with me. Again, Milestones is an epic film with a lot of stuff in it, and you know it's hard. It's hard. You know, I don't know, and I'm trying to.
Okay, for a minute.
No.
Listen, every joint. Listen, all right.
Here we go. Here we go. Boom.
Really beautiful picture.
So you got to meet the bearded, hippie-ish looking potter who's blind. This is about at the 2-hour mark. Robert Kramer puts in this scene. This is, you don't know. And understand, this is 1974. No explanation, but he's revealing information about this man.
Was nature a wilderness, and only to him was the land infested with wild animals and savage people. To us it was tame. Earth was bountiful, and we were surrounded with the blessings of the great mystery. Not until the hairy man from the east came, and with brutal frenzy heaped injustices upon us and the families we loved, was it wild for us. When the very animals of the forest began fleeing from his approach, then it was that for us the Wild West began.
Where are we?
That was by Chief Luther Standing Bear of the Oglala Band of Sioux.
They were people who wounded me.
Mm. Yeah. The picture that goes with this is this really beautiful picture of a vast plain like I've never seen, with sort of a cluster of teepees. It looks like almost like a field of mushrooms. It's really fine.
Is that like a village?
No, it says encampment. I guess it's something like a coming together of the tribes for a ceremony or something. That must be
playing.
Must be Bobby, I guess.
Oh,
he plays on into the night. Bucko White.
Well, it's really neat that you're reading the sound.
Well, that's the last one for tonight. I'm gone.
Well, it's gonna be a good day.
Yeah.
Oh, you really can shake.
Isn't that remarkable? They're reading in bed together. They're a couple. And they're reading about the wounded knee, about again, it's this epic. He's trying to stuff everything about that era into one film. And I'm going to take a little break here and read from Suzukiroshi because you'll see it connects to the film. So I'm going to do a little reading here. Got to find my book first. We're done. Put it. This is in my beginner's mind. Of course, I talk about it too much, probably. I discovered this book when I was 13, and it stayed with me and been a part of my life ever since. And in 2000, I saw this weird movie I'm showing you now that this book is the foundation of this film, actually. And I'll explain. There's a famous passage in these talks that suzukiroshi did where he talks about all throughout the book, he's talking about what is life, what life is. And he compares life to a waterfall. Here we go. This is the passage. And I'll try to do it justice. I'm sure Suzuki delivered this in 1972 at the San Francisco Zen Center, I think, or Mill Valley, I think. Not an expert, but I'll try to do my best. I went to Yosemite National Park and I saw some huge waterfalls. The highest one there is 1,340 feet high, and from it the water comes down like a curtain thrown from the top of the mountain. So the water comes down like a curtain being thrown from the top of it. He compares it to a curtain, like drapes, coming down from the top. It does not seem to come down swiftly, as you might expect. It seems to come down very slowly because of the distance. And the water does not come down as one stream, but is actually separated into many, many tiny streams. From a distance, it looks like a curtain. And I thought it must be very difficult experience for each drop of water to come down from the top of such a high mountain. It takes time, a long time for the water finally to reach the bottom of the waterfall. And it seems to me that our human life may be like this. We have many difficult experiences in our life. We have many difficult experiences, but at the same time, I thought the water was not originally separated. But was like one whole river. Only when it is separated does it have some difficulty in falling. It is as if water does not have any feeling when it is one whole river. So he's talking about the emergence of feelings and individuality and all these things, that the thing I love the most also is the thing that causes our problems, So I'm gonna get out my glasses here and see. Better. Age. So when we see one whole river, we do not feel the living activity of the water. But when we dip a part of the water into a dipper, we experience some feeling of the water, and we also feel the value of the person who uses the water. Feeling ourselves and the water in this way, we cannot use it in just a material way. It is a living thing. I mean, this is a lot, he goes on, but it's important because just like Robert Kramer surprised us with the information about his characters in that bedroom scene, in long into the film, hours into the film, he has a surprise for the viewer after the film, indeed after the credits. And so I'm going to play that now. I wasn't going to play the birth scene, I don't know. It's
Oh, they're really whizzing along, Susan.
They're stopping now.
Here we go. I'm just going to sit here in front of it like this, or next to it. Because scenes, you know, and trying to get scenes and trying to get, excuse me. There's no way to do it, I don't think, non-visually, you know. It's got to. This is what I'm talking about. Hold on.
Tell Aunt so-and-so to give this to the baby and it'll be all right.
Is that where the brain is?
Well, the brain is buried in there.
In there someplace.
But when I massage here,
Yeah.
I'm massaging the last point on one of the energy pathways that controls the internal heating.
Oh.
When I talked to you last time, and I said that Harriet would come, it's really special for me. Yeah. But for me, that we're here all at the same time is really something special. Just let your hands be comfortable. Just relax.
You know, the construction and everything. And
That's one of Kramer's associations, things, memory, and in the midst of this birth, doing a disservice to his film, fast forwarding through all this, but it's the only way I can. Here we go.
I was an F-4D pilot.
No. More Vietnam footage.
From the tail.
Gracepaley working on her film, the character working on her film about Vietnam, a baby, the baby's born. Now we have a credit sequence. This part is classic 70s credit sequence. The fonts and some of the people worked on this film or became very famous later. Some of them, I think. I don't know, but I just wanted to. You hear the sound of the waterfall? Look at this. After the credits, this is what he gives us. The waterfall from this book. And I'm sure many people that saw the film didn't know anything about this book or that talk. Wow. Again, my apologies for rushing through that birth scene. It's a very, I'm trying to, hit certain points in the film to demonstrate certain things about the film. And, you got to deal with what you got, tech that I have. And I read that excerpt from Suzuki perhaps a little too slowly. But Suzukiroshi spoke. There's a lot of footage on YouTube of his talks. And there's a documentary, many documentaries actually. I'm reading the biography of him called Crooked Cucumber, because on my Thomas More episode, Thomas More told me to get that book and said, that's the book. And so I'm finally reading Crooked Cucumber after many years of it had been published, written. I think it came out in 1998. So, but I feel like I'm reading it. I feel like it was written this morning in a way for me, and it makes me really happy to share this book again through this film. It is now 6:18. Do we want to do Chickstrand? Do we want to see her film now? Do we want to do a separate episode? Well, I'll tell you what. I'll talk a little bit about. So Chickstrand is a filmmaker that I know, that I was introduced to by Saullevine, Saullevine was part of a long, venerable tradition of experimental filmmakers. And for many, many years, he was a major figure at Massachusetts College of Art, Mass Art. And he showed Chickstrand soft fiction. He showed other Chickstrand films. So I must have encountered Chickstrand's films for the first time, not at Millennium as a 15-year-old or anthology in New York, no, at Mass Art Film Society, because that's one of the things he showed along with Stan Brakhage. And Chickstrand is working in a form, a genre, that people call experimental filmmaking. That's the label that they use for it. And I suppose that as a category, it's helpful to the viewer that when they watch a Chickstrand movie, soft fiction, it will be very unlike watching Pulp Fiction. And it'll be very unlike watching, I don't know, Barbenheimer or anything else. Very unique. More seriously, though, I'm going to just show. So the film is an hour film of vignettes of women talking about their lives, and talking about their lives in a very enigmatic, intimate, but also enigmatic, mysterious way. There's one long shot of a stark naked woman in the kitchen cooking, for example. And then there's opera, and there's sounds, and then there's actually there's an aria that's performed from Death and the Maiden. There's many things in the film, but anyhow, it's about these women talking about their lives. And, I can't show all the segments. I would love to. It's very accessible to see soft fiction. It's on YouTube, actually. I'm going to show the Criterion channel version. And I thought, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to show how she opens her film. And this is from 1979. It could have been made in 1969. It could have been made in 2009. At least some of it. There's some 70s things in the stylings of the people and the aesthetics. But I thought, because, the sound and the texture. So her film is about these women, but it's also about things like visual design and texture and emotions and psychology and memory. And I think it was best expressed by her when she was asked to describe the film. She said, "This film is an exorcism. literally, like like in The Exorcist. So that's how she describes her film. And so I thought, we might as well. Here's the Criterion Channel in all its glory. And do we have soft fiction? Yes, good. Unfortunately, it's towards the end. I do not want to, it's because I was trying to. So let's don't do this to them. I'm just going to do start over. Hopefully that'll.
Allow your breathing to become slow and even. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. Slip your shoes off and loosen any tight clothing. More. Be aware of your body. Take it up gently in both hands, wherever it feels good. First one way, then the other way, gathering, lifting, squeezing, and releasing. Relax, just so it feels good. Feel the lingering sensations. Gently. The other side. Nod your head up and down as if to say yes. From side to side to say no. With a feather-soft touch, with delicate fingers, be aware of the feelings in the palms of your hands. Let your mind come to rest. Deep within you. You may be there now. Enjoy the stillness. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, Watch and follow the screen.
I went into the Pasadena Museum one day, went into that big room in the way in the back against one wall, just as you walk in, and opposite the big entrance is I don't know what you would call it, it's a railing or a banister. And it's made of several metals like copper and brass, and some that as I recall, have a silver rather than a gold color to them. And it's something like, it's hard to explain what it is. It's very, very long. And the metal of this long railing was curved sometimes in long, slow S-shaped curves, and then sometimes curves that turned round in on themselves several times and were very more tightly curved, and and it had an outward flow and a self-contained circular flow to it, and the colors were very rich. The metal colors were very rich and very warm, and I had a kind of a warm feeling come over me, and I realized that I had this wave of desire going through my body to become this railing, to become this piece, and I could just feel my cells or my musculature or something give off a kind of a warmth in their desire to become that shape, to become that thing, and to exist with those curves and that shape and that presence in the world, and be that. I could feel that desire move along my I don't know, in my seemed like in my small parts of my cells or something like that, and it was very diffuse, soft warmth that went out along me, and it was like that warmth of desire, you know, that you can feel move out along your blood veins, and it makes you have the feeling that your bones are getting soft inside. Haven't you ever thought about what it would be like to have, say, a black cat fur coat and to live inside or it would be like to move through the world in a fur?
All right. Soft fiction. Oh God. So I'm going to ask a kind of rhetorical question. What does it mean that a human being opened up a movie like that? I've seen a lot of movies with tracking shots, you know. I mean, the first thing you experience is just pure sound. You don't really see anything. And it's the sound of railroad tracks, you know. And then in the audio underneath or alongside or mixed in with the radio track is sort of vague pop music from a radio, and also the sound of screaming, if you listen very closely. And, you know, you see the kind of the motion of the train. And then it moves into this house, and then you finally see a person talking about something. And that's how she opens her film. And you know, there's a lot of actually in the course of this hour film, you hear some things that are really things that the people in the film have experienced, that some of them are quite terrible. And then you also have things like what I just played opens the film as something more dreamlike or abstract. I'm trying to remember, what was the first experimental film I saw? I think it was a Michael Snow film. I think it was Presence, and or maybe Wavelength, one of those two. And I know it was in the 70s. And there's a sense in which Chickstrand is influenced by that milieu. I mean, she was part of the Filmmakers Cooperative and Canyon Cinema and all that. And yet, I would say she's totally unique. And I would say that I've seen thousands of movies. I've never seen a film with an opening that like that. I've never seen a film like this film. Actually, the 3 films I've talked about today, all 3 of them are totally unique. I just, and it's exciting to think that human beings did things like these objects that were made. It's remarkable. I think it's remarkable. And maybe I try to share that enthusiasm and say, well, it's really something. And that's all I have to say about it now. I don't know what's happening next. I know that next week there's an episode with Michael Berendt, and it's a book lunch. And we discuss the history of religion. Small topic. I'm really excited about that episode, and there's many other things coming up. I couldn't keep track of them all today, but it is the weekend. It's Friday, so I'm wishing you a safe, healthy weekend. And maybe during the weekend you could see or experience a film like one of these films, maybe, if you're lucky. I enjoy digging into these films, and I beg your pardon that. I mean, apologies that I can't always discuss them exactly in the way it's most ideal, because I have to dig into them, and I have to, as we used to say, fast forward and rewind through shots and the way the chapters are set up. I did my best, and I think the spirit is there, and that's what's important. And we're longer than 90 minutes, and so I hope this episode has been edifying and enlightening in some small measure. And I will see you soon. Thank you.